And welcome into a victory edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. The Stars take the lead in the Western Conference Finals with a 5-3 win in Edmonton. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan and joined by the creator of starsthoughts.com. You can also read his work at D Magazine. He is tremendous. In for Sean Shapiro, who's covering the Memorial Cup, a terrific hockey tournament indeed. It is the great Robert Tiffin. How are you, buddy?
Doing pretty good, Gavin. Can't complain about a game like that. A lot of fun stuff.
Now, I did not prepare you for this, but each victory we do have. Oh God, he pulls the Frosty up.
Oh, I'm no rookie. I've been there on the block once or twice. I'm ready for this.
Oh, all right, my man.
Come on, it's game day. Ready?
2, 3. Oh, man, you made my night by having the Frosty ready.
I don't mess around, Gavin.
Okay, I feel like I'm on a Six Flags ride sometimes, Robert. I really do. Kudos. 6-1 on the road. This is awesome. 2-1 lead. Best road record in the NHL. But I don't know if there's anyone that follows or watches hockey that wasn't watching tonight and saying, wow. I mean, what a difference a period makes. This is... And you could almost make the argument they almost did it the other night in that they really turned it on in periods second and third the other night too, but just a real tough first and then explosion from there.
Yeah, it's funny. You wouldn't really think about it just given how the game ended, but as much as they got outshot 10-3 in the first period, they got outshot 13-3 in the third period. But just because of that lull at the start of the third period, and of course with the clutch Robertson goal for the game winner, and the way they kind of slowed it down for a good chunk of the third, it doesn't quite feel like that, but it really was just the pendulum swinging back and forth. But they made the most of it in the second period when it was swinging their way, and that's what you got to do in a game like this.
Yeah, Roope Hintz was on the TNT postgame show and mentioned about being able to skate every single day, and that helped him during this injury time that he could come back. And listen, you never want players to get injured, but I did think he had a freshness on the ice tonight, Robert.
Yeah, he didn't look rusty. I'll say that. Like maybe the hands, it didn't look quite like he was angling for a shot. And again, we don't know officially what the injury was, but if it is a wrist, that would make sense that that's not something he's necessarily looking to lean on right out of the gate. But the legs were good, and all his defense flows from his reach and his speed, and that explains a lot. Yeah, if he's been staying fresh and skating as though he's playing each day to some extent, whether it's late in the mornings or whenever, that would explain it because he was there, and a couple of the assists he made too. That's a player who hasn't been sitting for 2 weeks. That's a player who's ready to go.
And when we think of depth, we think of 4 lines, and they run 4 lines consistently. But one of the things maybe that gets lost in the shuffle with depth is any player at any time can explode. And tonight, after, I don't even want to say struggling, but I think scoreless in 10 games, Jason Robertson with a massive game tonight.
Man, I don't know, no one would have predicted this. Some people did. You can find it out there, everyone, just because everyone's been talking about Jason Robertson, including myself, the last day or two, just because, it's logical, right? He's had a dry spell, hadn't scored a goal since the Vegas game. And with Roope Hintz out, it's just been noticeable that he hasn't quite been getting the same chances. So someone needed to step up. And Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin have scored the last couple of games, right? And that's great, but you're probably at this stage of their career not going to expect them to carry you through a whole series. I mean, that's just not fair to them or reasonable, even though they, you never know. And Jamie Benn, again, looked good tonight. But, man, Jason Robertson maybe really is just having Roope Hintz out there in the ice with him, getting to ice. He's faster than Robertson, right? Hintz is faster than most players, really, at any given time on the ice. And maybe that's just it, right? Just having that player, Robertson, reads off him well. That first goal is a perfect example, right? It's a little scrambly, but Hintz makes that excellent keep at the blue line. I mean, excellent. The puck was already halfway out, but Hintz just did catch it, right? There's no other player who probably makes that play right there, who has the combination of size and speed and reach that Hintz has. And then Robertson does exactly what he does when he's at his best, and he finds that soft space and is ready, right? He was ready for that one time where he didn't have to catch or settle the puck. He was absolutely ready for it, read off his guy, and ripped it like he had all the confidence in the world.
Yeah,
which is maybe the most impressive thing.
And on the game winner, the patience to tuck it in tight on Skinner, who Sean's the goalie expert on Spits and Suds, but I thought, I think Skinner played it pretty well, but the patience and waiting for Skinner just to move slightly. But I still think that was the right play, regardless, even if the save was made. It was in tight, and I absolutely love that he tried to force it in. Worst case scenario, potentially it causes a scrum or a rebound in front of the net, but it was just a really, really smart play by Robertson.
It really was. I mean, people talk a lot about, a goal scorer's goal, and, maybe that's the one-timer on the one hand, right? That's a goal scorer's goal, certainly. But I don't know. I think this really, because it's sort of a 2-on-1, right? He has, I think it was Johnston. I can't remember exactly, but it might have been Johnston over across with Nurse going down to block the pass. And Robertson is there. He looks at his surroundings and sees what he has, and he just kind of waits. He's just drifting towards the net, kind of waits. And the move I think Skinner made that really was the bad move, and Lundqvist was saying this post-game too, Henrik Lundqvist was saying it on the post-game show, that he reaches with the blocker. And as soon as he reaches with the blocker, Robertson does what any good chess player does, and they look for the space left behind. When he puts his blocker down, there's space behind that arm now. It's not tucked against the post. That blocker hand is reaching out forward. And Robertson, who's a big guy, right, 6'3", is able to manipulate the puck to shoot it, cram it. Maybe it glances off the skate blade, whatever it is, it goes in that space. Instead of the arm staying along the post, Skinner's reaching out with the blocker, maybe because Skinner doesn't think Nurse is still blocking the lane, so he's trying to block the pass, or he's just trying to front the shot, right, and to decrease the angle, even though Robertson isn't really at a dangerous angle at that point. But Skinner was kind of his own worst enemy there. And, kudos to Robertson. This is someone who knows how to score goals and has done it a lot of different ways. And he just outweighted the goalie and found his spot in, about as clutch a spot as you could ask for.
I think we also have to give credit to Pete DeBoer because we all know Joe Pavelski hasn't been playing well. But at the same time, you could make the argument, hey, maybe we get Pavelski going by reuniting that top line with Hintz back and go Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski. But instead, DeBoer moves up Seguin, who's had a terrific playoffs. He responds with 2 assists. And I thought that was a really interesting play by the coach. And just all year long, it just feels as though he's made the right line combos, whether it's in game or before the game, at the right times.
It really is. It's so easy to criticize coaches for lines. Way back in the day, Lindy Ruff, it seems like, was constantly switching lines up and ruffling them, I think they called it. And yet it seems like every move DeBoer's made, whether it's been in game or to start a game like this, where everyone in the world would have expected Seguin to go back down, maybe with Marchment and Duchesne, right? But that's not what he did. And that line looked good. That line looked really good with them there. And maybe that's a bit of an acknowledgement that this is where Pavelski more belongs at this point, is he is really going to be, even though he's been getting tons of ice time, that he belongs in a line that isn't getting all the prime scoring chances because he's been struggling to convert them. Or maybe it's just that Seguin really was going that well, and he has been in this series. Sagan's been fantastic in this series. Either way, it's funny, for all the hype Edmonton gets for its top guys having to carry games, this was a night where Dallas's top players absolutely carried them, and Edmonton got a depth goal from Adam Henrique. And Edmonton, you would have thought, they get 2 goals from big guys and then a goal from Adam Henrique, but that's not enough on this night, because Dallas's big guys, that's the sort of team they are. They're deep, but on any given night, you could have someone like Robertson or Wyatt Johnston or now Roope Hintz just go off. And Seguin scored 2 goals the other night. You just never know. They have players. You forget how good some of these players are. I mean, this is Jason Robertson, who was like 4th in the Hart voting just a year ago, but he reminded everyone tonight.
Yeah, I'm interested in a couple of things. One, how is Edmonton psychologically now? The place was rocking. It's a great hockey city. We all know that, but just a consistent roar in the first period. Real good barn. Just an awesome first period. And that, to me, was an extension of Edmonton really playing well in this series. And just in periods 2, and they did come on, as you mentioned, In period 3, however, it just seemed as though they were kind of chasing the puck and maybe defensive assignments being missed in that Stars comeback.
Yeah, their defensive coverage was really sloppy in a lot of ways. I think on that first goal, you could look back and you'd see, I think it's McDavid and Hyman, but they were both, Hyman especially, just kind of blowing the zone and staying way too high. And so they weren't able to get back down low and cover Robertson for the eventual one-timer. So their defensive coverage was really sloppy, which, to be honest, that's kind of been the one criticism you could really offer of someone like McDavid for a lot of his career, that he's not necessarily the most responsible player in his own zone at times. But psychologically, man, it's early, but as Yogi Berra said, it gets late early here. And you could start feeling like that for Edmonton when you have all the momentum. You feel like you're the best team on the planet, and then Dallas undoes it all in just a couple minutes in the second period. Suddenly you're tied, and then boom, another goal from Johnson, and you're behind. And suddenly you're having to play a completely different hockey game than you were in the first period, where you're cruising, you're putting all the pressure on them. And they, like you said, they had some shots. Oettinger had to be good, although it's not like he had to be world class at a lot of times. He just had to be better than Skinner, which he was. And as much as they piled up shots in the third period, it really did feel like once Dallas got up, even though it was tied after that third goal by Edmonton, it really felt like Dallas grabbed the game back and played the game they wanted to play for the last two periods, which that's the second game in a row where Dallas has finished the game the way they wanted to after Edmonton started the way they wanted to. And especially given that Edmonton's power play, they got two opportunities tonight, but if their power play isn't clicking and they're not drawing confidence from that, I don't know how you really feel good about your chances right now if you're Edmonton. What do you have to fall back on and feel good about? You can win a period, maybe a period and a half if you're really rolling, but Dallas is just going to chip away. They barely seem phased by those two goals when they came out of the second period. It's you have to think they're pretty shaken at this point.
And from a also psychological standpoint, this seems as though Dallas's MO, where against Vegas, against Colorado, now Edmonton, you see Dallas gaining strength as the series moves along as far as breaking down the competition. That's one of the things I've been most impressed about. I did want to hit on Chris Knobloch, pretty outspoken after the game the other night, talking about those penalties and Edmonton drawing 2 penalties, but wasn't one of those lopsided affairs, which, I actually thought, Robert, I know Stars fans as a whole were upset, but from a coaching strategy point of view, I thought it was brilliant coming out like that. I mean, if it could draw one more penalty, because clearly their power play wins them games, and at the percentage prior to this series that it was clicking on, why not try to get in the referee's head that, hey, we're not getting the calls that we should.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of that of Vegas when they switched goalies to Aiden Hill after game 2 or 3 of the series, whatever it was. Those little things that aren't necessarily outright desperation, but at the same time, they're not the sort of things you do when you're comfortable in a series. And Edmonton's tied 1-1, and they're going home, right? They've taken home ice advantage back, going back home here in this series. So the last thing you'd expect them to need to be doing is working the officials through the media. And again, Knobloch was really careful with his words. It's not like he was, ranting and raving or anything. He was very strategic. But at the same time, like you said, he knows what he's doing. He knows exactly why he says that quote and why he took a second before he spoke and all those sorts of things. Like all you need to do as a coach, and you've seen lots of players, you've seen Paul Maurice do it before. You just need to say it. You just need to have that be a headline somewhere that the coach is questioning the balance of calls, and that's going to get in a referee's mind somehow, right? It's possible at least it can get in officials just the back of their mind, and that might make the difference for that one call. I guess you could argue whether or not that was the difference on the Mason Marchment call or not. Adding that extra one.
I think that's a great boy. You're good at this segue thing, Robert.
Gavin, you were out of town. I'm starting to take your job. You're really careful.
Absolutely. For those that don't know, I was out of town on business. Robert and Sean did an amazing preview. I was listening from my hotel room. I was jealous. I missed you guys, and you guys did a heck of a job. I was, sitting there taking notes and saying, man, am I going to be allowed back? You guys were beasts. So thank you for doing that. Let's go to that. 1944 of the second period. Zach Hyman cross-checking against Mason Marchment. Oh, but wait. Mason Marchment embellishment, Robert.
This isn't the first embellishment call Marchment's gotten, even in the playoffs. I think he's had another one already this postseason. And it's not the only one he's gotten this season either. And he's, Sean's mentioned it on the show before. He's been fined by the NHL for diving. He's on their list of certified divers, and the referees know about this, right? They know this list very well. And if you look at this play, look, it's a cross check. It's obviously a cross check by Hyman right in the small of the back as Marchment's backing up. But there's two things here that I think contributed to Steve Kozari calling the embellishment on Marchment. Number one, you can see in the replay, Marchment shoulder checks. He looks behind him as he's kind of drifting backwards a little bit. He should know Hyman's there, most likely, right? These are professional athletes. They situational awareness, especially on the ice, right? They should know where people are. And he even does the shoulder check. So if you're a ref and you see him do the shoulder check, then you see him continuing to drift backwards. And then as the puck kind of comes into the area, normally you'd see a player start to turn or just change their position. I could totally be misreading this, but my sense is that Marchment lingers a little bit more going backwards, kind of anticipating the contact. And when it comes, he goes down flat and he stays down too. It's not like he got hit as he's trying to turn or get into the play. He really does go prostrate really fast. And I wonder if those two elements, the shoulder check, so he should know something's coming, and how, for lack of a better term, how quickly he goes down and stays down. I wonder if that contributes in Kozari's mind. And, he knows Marchment, right? He's on that list. I think those two factors for Kozari are, it's embarrassing for the officials and players draw calls after the fact, and they have to hear about it. And they've had it in the back of their mind now, unless they've been totally insulated, that Chris Knobloch's been questioning the balance of calls. So what better situation for them to prove, no, we're calling the play regardless, we're calling what we see, than here, seeing a player who knows there's contact coming, who's a big guy, and goes down maybe just a hair more easily than he should. I think that's probably what's going through his mind. Again, I'm not saying it's the right call, that you shouldn't give him a cross-check penalty. He got cross-checked in the back. But, if the ref feels like you're trying to work him, he's more likely to turn a blind eye to some of that stuff or even it up like he did here.
Yeah, and let's go back to game one where Roope Hintz was against Colorado, where Roope Hintz was called on a massive embellishment call.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying the Stars have the reputation, Robert, but they have a reputation. Because if you look, and granted, it did draw a cut on Jason Robertson, but in that first period, Craig and I were talking about this, and Luds felt the same way. In that first period, Robertson draws a quick penalty, clearly a high stick. But if you notice the Avalanche players, they immediately went over to Robertson and started chirping him, and then they went right to the referee.
Mm-hmm.
And, I personally felt as though they kind of got in the ref's head a little bit. It's the same game. So, maybe they do have that reputation based on Marchment, but at the same time, the referees have to call it like they see it. And we did have a question regarding that. Jeff Johnston says, you and Robert are going to have to help me understand how something can be both a penalty and an embellishment. If it's a penalty, how can it also be an embellishment? Seems like some cowardice from the refs. Well, I'm going to try my best to answer this question, Robert, and feel free to chime in. So you have to actually look at it as two separate entities. You cannot look at it as one. The first call on the ice, which is cross-checking, stands regardless. The question that the referee has to deem is there overselling of the penalty? So it is separate from the initial call. So you have to think of it as two calls, not one call. In other words, you can't say, well, if it's embellishment, is it actually a penalty? In the ref's mind, that absolutely is a penalty. They then make the determination after the call if it is embellishment.
Yep.
How do I do?
No, I think you're bang on, because embellishment, again, it's not necessarily this every time, but the way I kind of read embellishment calls from a referee are kind of an up yours to the player. Like, don't you dare try to work me. Don't you dare try to to show me what you want me to see. You know, it's kind of one of those, look, I'm here to call what happens. Your job is to try, right? Your job is to make the effort and to earn the calls through hard work, not to buy the calls by selling me something that I'm not out here to buy.
Yeah.
So if they just don't want to be shown up. I mean, the referees are human. They're jocks too, right? These are all people in incredible athletic shape. And if they sense that you're trying to make them look dumb or get something out of them they didn't mean to give, no one likes being, no one likes being grifted, right? So it's kind of that decision that, yeah, you've done this, but the way in which you did it was so unnecessary that I'm going to tag you for this. It's a little different than like a trip or something. That's the one I a lot of times have a problem with, like a trip and an embellishment, because if you tripped him, he fell. How much more can you embellish a trip? If you tripped him so he fell, he's going to fall, unless he's Superman diving down the ice or something on completely his own momentum. That's the one I sometimes get annoyed at, where I think the ref does it just because they're not confident enough in the initial trip call. So sometimes I see embellishments that way, where they're just not confident in the original call. But this one I think is 100% because it's Marchment and because of the way it all kind of happened. I think this is the ref saying, no, that's a cheap one. You can't do it. You contrast it with the one Wyatt Johnston earned late in the game when he went around Nurse, when he banked the puck off the boards to go up the ice. That it's similar in a lot of ways. Like he judges the situation exactly right. He could have just chipped it high, and the Stars needed to change at that point too. They'd been in their zone for a while, but Johnston instead takes a second, sees that Nurse is kind of caught in between, and banks it off the boards on one side and tries to jump around him on the other. And Nurse doesn't really have a choice there, right? He knows he can't leave his man completely, so he tries to take him and sell that it's close enough to when Johnston had the puck. But that's an easy call for the official, and Johnston goes down, and there's no problem with him going down there because he's making the effort. He's making the justifiable effort to get the puck, whereas Marchment isn't really trying to get a puck, isn't really trying to get to space. He's just kind of falling down after getting, I'm sure a painful cross-check, but he's not really trying to make a hockey play per se there.
Right.
I think that's what Kazari didn't like.
Yeah, I clearly thought that was a penalty on that Johnston drew, and it was a very smart play, hitting it off the boards, and that would have been a breakout, and he was certainly impeded and tripped up. I did have a question on that because I received some feedback after that some people felt as though the Stars were a little too conservative. I actually will tell you, Robert, granted, it's Matthias Janmark, and I used to have this thing with Matthias Janmark. Listen, I think Matthias Janmark has had an amazing career. But Robert, I used to, when I sat in the stands and Matthias Janmark would have like either a 2-on-1 or breakout, I wouldn't even get up from my seat. I don't know what it is about poor Matthias Janmark. He just never has been able to finish. The hustle is amazing. And he just goes. And I know he's great on the penalty kill. So he did have an opportunity on Jake Oettinger while killing that penalty, but I'm okay. And I wanted to get your thought. I'm okay with being conservative. I know you may possibly go for the kill shot, but at the same time, I almost want two defensemen in that scenario. I do not want to give up a goal at that juncture in the game. And I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, even giving up a chance, there was a little bit of a scary moment halfway through. And then I think if I'm not mistaken, DeBoer called a timeout halfway through that power play too, to kind of, and you have to think that was part of the calculus. Like, okay, let's remember we're actually winning the game right now. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're trying to execute. And then we're going to keep 3 men high regardless. So that, try these things down low. That's fine. But I don't want that one of the guys from the blue line slipping down low and then us getting caught with a 2-on-1. We would never forgive ourselves if we got to this point in the game on the power play and then we gave up any sort of chance at this point. So yeah, you want to, bring the dagger at that point with the power play, but they're looking for it. And, they've got some fast guys, even though Janmark does have absolutely one of the worst shots. His shot tool is one of the worst, always has been, kind of. He scored a little bit. I want to say it was like 15, 16 goals off the top of my head. And I think his first full season in like 2016 with Dallas. But a lot of those were from close range. I mean, those aren't him ripping a wrister from the top of the circles like Jamie Benn or something like that in his prime. We all saw him late in his career with Dallas. I mean, it's one of the situations, right? They wanted to bring people in who could do more than just be in the right position and skate well in the bottom six. They saw pretty clearly, Jim Nill and everyone, that no, we need to get something from the bottom six. And that's, again, another big difference. Despite the Adam Henrique goal, that this Dallas team can threaten in their bottom six. I mean, Marchwood didn't score, but he also had that breakaway. Dadonov almost had a breakaway of his own. And those players have scored in those situations before. And that's a threat that the Oilers, as much as you love Matthias Janmark's speed, that's a threat that, I don't think anyone was exactly biting their nails when they saw him get that one chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friend Chris Barnard responded to my tweet at the beginning of the game where I said, pretty awesome. The crowd sings "Oh Canada" in Edmonton. That was really cool and loud. And he said, nothing is awesome about this. I'll just say, like, I love you, Chris, but at the same time, like, we can't say that was awesome, because I did hear during the Star Spangled Banner in Edmonton a couple people yell out "Stars." So I mean, everyone has their bits. And I don't know. I don't want to say it got me emotional, but I just think it's really cool when a crowd, like the announcer just says, "Go." Yeah. And I mean, people were singing it loud. And I just thought it was a nice touch.
The coolest moment, I remember Mike Heiko was there for this, because it came up either in conversation or I saw him mention it later. But this was way back, probably like eight or 9 years ago or something like that, in Anaheim. And the singer comes out, the regular season game. Anaheim at the time wasn't, one of the best teams in the league or anything. And they come out to sing the anthem, and the microphone cuts out pretty early on. But it's not one of those, kind of stage, they always do this and hand it to the crowd. It was actually technical difficulties. And then the crowd took over after just a second or two. The crowd realized, oh, there's problems. And they totally took it up and sang. And it was so organic and so kind of grassroots. It was really cool. I mean, it never fails to stir you. Even when it's a little bit kind of prepared, but that was a moment where it was really, in the middle of a hockey game, I guess it's Memorial Day, so it's appropriate to mention, to be talking about this. So well done. But that was a really cool moment that I still remember from a random game in Anaheim a long time ago. I will say on the other side, to get people angry at me, that if I were in charge of things, I think the national anthem should actually be "America the Beautiful." It's a way better song. Just sounds way better song, a lot of different ways. Yeah. Probably not for this podcast, but that's, I gotta have.
I actually don't think you'll have many people that are upset about that.
Okay, because "Oh Canada" is a fantastic song. It's fantastic. I love it. It's hard not to love that song and sing along with it.
I mean, I'll be driving around listening to Rangers baseball on the Fan, and I absolutely love in our broadcast that we take the time to play the song. And I find myself singing it. It's absolutely catchy. Yeah, absolutely. But I know when I love going to Canadian games because I love the dual anthem. I just think it's special. Whether it's first or second, kudos to Selena Ray, who against Ottawa and Montreal does the French version. I've always been impressed by that. I listen. This is going to be even more controversial than yours. I love "Oh Canada." I think it's just and probably because it reminds me of hockey so much. But yeah, I have a tough time, like, against Vegas and Colorado specifically. You get emotional with the fan base. I have a tough time in Edmonton. I just think it's such a great fan base. I think they love their oil, and to me, they're into the game, and it's just a heritage fan base with, just a lot of history. So I thought they were loud tonight. I think they went obviously home unhappy. But at the same time, it's to me, it's just a fun series in so many ways. It was so up and down at points tonight. Guy asks, I have a question. I've been watching hockey hardcore the last 7 years. I still don't know how they decide who's going to do faceoffs. I thought it was always the center forever, but Jamie plays wing and Segi now, and they always do them. Never figure it out on my own. Well, I think it's a really interesting question, Robert, and I would say that we are at the stage where we are in positionless hockey.
Yeah, I think that's right. Total hockey, right? To crib a term from soccer. I think Sean wrote a piece about that a while ago, so I guess I'm cribbing it from him. But the short answer is you have strong side and weak side. So right-handed player or left-handed player would take it depending on what side of the ice it's on. And typically that's why you don't want to line with all three guys being all right-handed or all left-handed. It's good to have a mix of, to some extent, just so you don't have someone having to take a face-off on their quote-unquote weak side, because then you have your less dominant hand down there trying to draw the puck out, and you'll often get out-muscled. So typically they'll do it, back in the day with Ben and Seguin. Seguin's a right shot, Ben's a left shot. So it just depends on which side of the ice it was on. Back when they were the two main ones on the on the same line. Spezza was a right shot, right? So if he and Ben were on the same line, same thing. Both really good face-off guys. So they would just alternate. And Ben, was the center back in the day too. So he got pretty good at face-offs, and Seguin has gotten a lot better at face-offs over his career too. He's very strong at them now. So that's really the short answer. Is it just depends on that. You go with your best face-off guys. Pavelski, obviously, for center for a long time. Another historically really good face-off guy who's also, I believe, a right shot. So there's a fun story way back when Jaromir Jagr was on the Stars in 2012, briefly during the shortened season. And then the Stars traded him right before the trade deadline of the shortened season. So he only played something like 30 games or something for him. But it was great.
That ended up getting Jason Dickinson.
Yep. From that trade to Boston, I think it was.
Yeah.
But there's a story about Jaromir Jagr having to, during a timeout, and there was, I think, an offensive zone faceoff with the goalie pulled. So there's 6 attackers. And as the Stars go down there, Jaromir Jagr has to stop Glenn Golitzson, who was the Stars coach at the time and now an assistant coach in Edmonton, actually. So he's right across the bench. Yeah. And Jagr had to stop and tell Golitzson, hey, you need another center out there. You have like a center and 5 wingers, or a center, 4 wingers, and a defenseman, or whatever it was in 2012. It would have been a bit of a motley crew probably at that point. But Jagr had to kind of tell his coach, hey, that you're supposed to have 2 centers in case one gets tossed out of the faceoff. You need someone else who's experienced in taking faceoffs, especially for a crucial situation like this. You definitely don't want to get caught with someone taking the faceoff who's, likely to lose it. You need to have 2 centers on those crucial faceoffs. And that was kind of the point where once that story came out, I can't remember if it was before or after they'd moved on from Golitzson to Lindy Ruff, but it was one of those points that, everyone's, even NHL coaches have to learn a little bit on their first job. They're still learning stuff from Jagr.
Yeah, absolutely. And to further the question for you, Jeff, as Robert has mentioned, it's that depth that allows you to be more aggressive in the face-off circle. Because if you're getting kicked out, let's say, I'll just throw it out there, Pavelski gets kicked out. There's going to be someone coming into the circle that has a really effective percentage as far as win on face-off. So once again, we talk about that Stars depth, and one of those depths is face-offs. I was on the fan earlier, Robert, and I talked about, they asked me about an X factor. And I said, well, one of the X factors will always be, because Edmonton's pretty good on the draw themselves, is, face-off percentage when you look at the overall game, because when you have 2 offensive teams that are going up and down, possession means everything. So if you can win that face-off, and we look tonight, face-off percentage, Stars 51.8, but look at Edmonton, 48.2. So that's really close compared to some of the opposition the Stars have faced in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need that depth in your lineup, and the Stars are kind of fortunate to have a plethora of kind of centers or former centers now playing wing. So they almost always automatically have at least 2 guys out there who they're very comfortable taking faceoffs with. We're not in the days of a center, a left winger, and a right winger anymore, and only the center knows how to take faceoffs, like you said.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
So good, so good, so good.
Treat Dad to the good stuff at Nordstrom Rack and save big. Father's Day is Sunday, June 16th, and Nordstrom Rack's got gifts Dad will love. Up to 60% off. Shirts, activewear, watches, cologne, denim, and more. Find amazing deals on Tommy Bahama, Cole Haan, Original Penguin, and Vince. Great brands, great prices. So get to your Nordstrom Rack store now and make Dad's Day with gifts up to 60% off.
Yep. Kyle White says, I had to pause the game for a minute. As soon as I fell behind the broadcast, they scored 3 times. So I watched the rest of the game behind. You're welcome for the win tonight. I think,
well done.
Robert, they'll probably post an assist for Kyle. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they'll update it after the NHL stats bureau goes through to update all the shots on goal. I'm sure Kyle's got an apple coming his way.
Hey man, I never dog anyone like that because I'm that guy. If I'm in the kitchen and something's happening, I stay in the kitchen. So I've done
I had
it
a whole
since I
text
was a
thread
kid.
during the game with a couple different folks who were saying, okay, well, my wife was taking a shower at the time. Is she allowed to come out, or does she have to just listen to the radio at this point? What's going on? The water bill's too expensive, Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes sports so awesome. Will McKay, what did you see the biggest difference between the first period and the final 2, Robert?
Part of it was the breakouts. The Oilers, one of the things I noticed, they might have mentioned it in the broadcast too, actually, come to think of it, but the Oilers were getting behind the Stars defense a lot, both with high flips and just some of their breakouts. They were forcing the Stars defense to turn around, which is always the goal. Every team they faced in the playoffs so far has been trying to do the same thing in a variety of different ways. But that just led to the Stars having to work a lot harder in their own zone, and it led to their breakouts being, they also had some bad passes too. The Stars passing and breakout passing in the first period, sometimes it looked like their sticks were like the ice was terrible or something. And Edmonton usually has great ice, so that'd be really weird. But it was just really, really sloppy and rushed. Like there were Edmonton players the Stars weren't in places that they weren't necessarily expecting them to be. So some of that was a little bit more aggressive forechecking by Edmonton. But some of it too was how they were getting the puck in the first place. And the Stars were just really struggling to get back into the neutral zone with pace and with speed, or they just had to get it out and change at times. That's pretty generic. Usually if you're struggling, those two things are going to be factors that you're not able to traverse the neutral zone well. But in this case, it was just Edmonton was just completely controlling it and constantly installing the puck. And the Stars were having to work way too hard along the boards. And it really cost them.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan H., who is up in Vancouver area that listens to Spits and Suds, says the narrative on the Canadian broadcast tonight was that Roope fixed Jason Robertson, as Jason Robertson can't create on his own. I disagree, but do you think that narrative carries on your water? No. I personally, I don't. I think that it certainly helps, but I think Jason Robertson has had success in multiple areas. But clearly, when you, I would just counter with this, Robert. I think a lot of people are better when they're paired with Roope Hintz.
Yeah. I think you could amend that to say Robertson struggles to score goals when he doesn't have a setup guy like Hintz. But like you said, that's true of a lot of players, that they're going to be better at scoring goals when they have Roope Hintz skating next to them. But Robertson came into the game. I think he was tied for second in points on the team in the playoffs. So actually, I'd say he's great at creating. He set up Miro Heiskanen for a great 2-on-1 goal earlier. I think it was against Colorado just a couple games ago. And it was a situation he could have shot in the 2-on-1, but he made a great pass that just for a killer goal over to Heiskanen. And I think it was like game 5 against Colorado. So he's had plenty of times where he's set up people and gotten assists and made the play. I think it's just been the situation where he hasn't quite been getting the same sort of space because you don't have Hintz flying through and drawing players to him in ways that Robertson knows how to exploit. So something's in the learning process, but let's not be too, that's one of the reasons I wrote about this today, is because it felt like we were being a little bit too hard on Robertson for a guy who's still been really good and still been breaking even. It's not like he's been a minus player. He's been facing top competition. This isn't a guy who's, known for being really fast. He's been playing against the top players on some really good teams, and he still was even in plus minus at 5-on-5 in the playoffs this year. And that's still, it's not the same thing as being +5 or +8 or something, but it means you're not hurting your team and you're still putting in a lot of minutes. He's logging like second most forward minutes of anyone on the team. This is a player who's been playing crucial minutes and racking up points, not scoring as many goals. But that's the thing about the Stars, is you get goals from a lot of different places. So yeah, sure, it makes sense to the guy who scored 110 points or whatever 2 years ago. Yeah, that you'd want more from him. But I think it was more just, the top line went from being fine and could like match up with the opposing line, and then you hope you get points from across the lineup. It went from that situation to now your top line is a dominant weapon that can win you games, as we saw tonight. So that's a big improvement, but it's not like there were problems before, at least to a significant extent.
Right. Yeah, and everyone should go. And that article is on starsthoughts.com, right? On Robertson.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is Robert's terrific new website. All Stars fans should follow Robert and check out his new website. There's some great data and information on there. And I did want to throw out, because I think people get caught up in Jason Robertson as far as scoring goals. But I don't think a lot of people think like, okay, who led the Stars in scoring this year? It's Jason Robertson.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And not only led the Stars by a wide margin, 13 points ahead of Joe Pavelski. So then you go to Stanley Cup playoffs. Okay, well, all right, but Robertson's been struggling kind of at times in the playoffs. Well, Jason Robertson right now leads all Stars in scoring in the playoffs with 16 points. So, it's fascinating. I mean, 16 games played for Robertson. I know he had a massive game tonight, 16 points. That's pretty darn good in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
It's the curse of high expectations, right?
Yes.
You score 40 plus goals, you score 100 plus points every season. You don't do that now. People are asking what's wrong, or when are you going to get back to that point? I'm reading a great biography on Clayton Kershaw actually right now, and it's his career is so similar in a lot of ways. Where you win some Cy Youngs earlier in your career, you win MVP or whatever. And then every season after that, it doesn't matter if you're still the best pitcher, even on your team.
Right.
If you're not the best pitcher in baseball, people are asking questions. And then the playoffs come. If you're not winning the playoffs every year, people are asking, why'd you fail? I mean, it's one of those, the amount of pressure that these pro athletes have to deal with once they get to that upper echelon and that elite status, it's kind of unfathomable in a lot of ways. So you have to that's why I give a lot of kudos to Robertson for going off in a game like tonight. Regardless of whether, Hintz deserves a lot of credit for it, and I'm sure he does, performing like that after what he's been going through and after, knowing that he hasn't scored in a while, that you have to stay pretty mentally tough and mentally locked in to still be able to bring a game like that, even after a bit of a dry spell, at least in the goal scoring department. Yeah.
Yeah. And Howie, our Spits and Suds listener in Colorado, says this about Jason Robertson. A Jason Robertson appreciation post, real special because he is an Asian American hockey fan growing up in Dallas. It's so cool to finally see someone that looks like us doing what he's doing. Pretty awesome. So I agree. And I did want to say kudos to TNT as well. And they've done this in Dallas. We talked about the Edmonton O Canada and having the ability to put on TV the native tribe talking about Memorial Day and how important it is up in that area of Canada. And I'll always remember Jason Robertson embracing, I believe they did Asian Heritage Day in Winnipeg, and the spotlight was on him and how much he embraced that. And I think it takes a true leader to understand, he's really one of the faces of the NHL. And for a guy like Howie to say that, I think that's absolutely awesome, because there will be kids in the NHL in the future based on Jason Robertson and probably based on his brother as well.
Yeah, that's another layer of pressure that, it's easy not to think about as someone, who looks like most of the hockey players in the NHL, right? I often don't think about this. About what it's like when, you're kind of, people are additionally going to be asking, okay, how does a player who looks like that, how do they play, right? It's not right, but that's just how a lot of people will perceive it, right? You're kind of, well, I haven't seen a lot of people who look like you playing at this level, so let's see, right? And to see him be one of the best players in the NHL, that's got to be cool. That's got to be cool for people who don't have a lot of representation in the sport. The other thing too is how he scores his goals. Tonight was a great representation. He scored a killer one-timer goal, a scrappy backhand goal, a really nice backhander too, and then a weird kind of solving a mystery, getting a puck through a space that there shouldn't be. I mean, those are three. This is not a one-note or one-tool player, as much as sometimes he's characterized that way. He knows how to score goals and affect the game in a lot of different ways too. So kudos to Robertson for dealing with everything he has to deal with in a lot of different arenas and still being one of the Stars' best players.
Yeah, absolutely. William at William Willow 2 says, big win. I'm cracking up here in Connecticut since I have to work in 6 hours. It's incredible how Hintz changed one line. What do you think of the first two Oilers goals tonight? I hate how people give Otter such a hard time.
Yeah, they're the first two Oilers goals and the third Oilers goal are very, very different in a lot of ways. The first two are really similar in that both of them, I don't really put on Oettinger at all.
Yeah.
The first one, it's just really bad luck in a lot of ways. I mean, not
That was a
not
great
outright
tweet you
bad
had.
luck. Yeah, it was created really well by Edmonton. They did kind of the same play on their first two goals, where they have someone curling out from behind the net and firing a shot almost from that exact same spot. Towards the top of the circle there, or kind of partway into the left circle. The first shot, McDavid shoots it. It goes off Heiskanen's skate. So Heiskanen was actually in the lane, got a piece of it. The puck flutters. It's going wide, but Hyman is in the blue paint behind Oettinger because they've been crashing the net, and it goes off Hyman into the net. So it's a bit of a bad break, one that Edmonton created, right, with great possession and great pressure. They created it, but it had to bounce off two other players before it went in the net. So a bit of a bad break. And the second one, Seguin actually put it into the net on the second one. He's wrestling, kudos to him. He's actually out muscling David a bit on the back door. It's not totally destroying him, but Seguin's not a huge guy. But those are both really strong players, and give Seguin credit. He was holding his own, and they're both, as their sticks are locked up and going, they hit the puck, I think, twice. And it just ticks off the stick the one time to kind of get to the side of Ottinger's pad. And then Seguin or whoever moves the sticks the other way, and it just clips the toe of Seguin's stick perfectly to slide right in. It's like an air hockey goal. It just goes right and slots in a space just slightly bigger than the width of the puck between Ottinger's skate and the post. So, yeah, Ottinger will probably tell you he needs to not go down quite as much or be able to reach the other post with his skate there. But that's him. He'd only say that just because goalies tend to be harder on themselves than anyone else, but I don't really put that on him. That's a puck that had to circumnavigate the crease to find the very, very tiniest spot, the back post. The third goal, though, I will say that one, Oettinger wants back for a couple reasons. One, for the initial pass to Harley, kind of the hospital pass or buddy pass, whatever you want to call it, where Harley gets it and immediately has to get rid of it because the forecheck coming hard. And then Oettinger kind of doesn't hold his post and leans away and leave space for Henrique's tip to go right in there. So I'm not sure what Oettinger was actually reading on that tip, if he thinks that the puck is going to go to the back door, so he's getting ready to push, or he's getting ready to push out and kind of front because he thinks Henrique's going to catch it and shoot or something. I'm not really sure. I guess I should go back and watch it a couple more times, but he absolutely leaves his post when really he shouldn't be. So that third goal, I would definitely put on Oettinger for those two reasons, but the first two, not at all. That's just Edmonton getting some bounces after just laying on the pressure. So they earned them, even if they didn't necessarily score them in a pretty way. Those first.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Big Rob, who says, was that the most impressive third period after absolutely falling on their faces in the first? Yeah. I think it's almost today's NHL too. We kind of have to come to I know people were hard on Edmonton and there were a lot of defensive breakdowns, but at the same time, you cannot let off the gas in any way when you're in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you knew a push was going to come. And again, Edmonton did get a lot of shots in the third, but it's a little similar to what y'all were talking about after game two in the first period, where the shots really lopsided. But I think you and Sean were talking about how maybe the chances actually weren't quite as lopsided as the shots were. And the third period in this game, I think, was a little bit of the same too, where Oettinger had to make a couple of nice saves. I can't remember if it was the third period. It might have been in the second, but there was a great McDavid shot during a power play that Oettinger. It was a feed from behind the net, and Oettinger somehow, he was pretty screened. He just reached back with his blocker and his stick, and the paddle of the stick actually made a save. But for the most part, the Stars, I felt, played the game they wanted to play. Certainly in the second period, when they were pretty dominant the whole time. I mean, just overwhelmingly dominant, right? More so than the Oilers even were in the first period in a lot of ways. And then the third period might have tended more towards the Oilers in terms of shots, but it still felt like the Stars were really comfortable in that game. Yeah. And they were allowing shots they were okay with allowing for the most part. And, when you're leading, or even when you're tied with this Stars team, they're perfectly happy to wait around and give you low quality shots and then create high danger chances. And they only needed one for Robertson to win him the game.
I'm going to go old school on you in a second, because I know I'm wrong about this analytically, but I do not like the goalie pull with multiple minutes left. I didn't like it the other night when the Stars were actually shorthanded. To me, I understand that creates a 6-on-4, but at the same time, I think, you obviously have the free ability in that scenario to whip it down the ice with no, penalty as far as icing coming back. And tonight, I just felt as though Edmonton had enough sustained pressure to not allow that. And granted, you have to stop the player from firing it down the ice, but Joe Pavelski almost had one, just missed on that. And then Miro down there. And I guess it does come back to the Stars winning some crucial face-offs, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel as though when the team is pressing pretty hard, maybe hold on to it till about a minute left, and then you can pull.
Yeah, that was kind of the standard back in the day, right? It was about a minute is when you'd pull the goalie.
Yeah.
And, they've done a lot of studies that say, that depending on how much you're trailing by and a lot of other factors, but depending on how much you're trailing by, when is the optimal in terms of like chances you can expect to give up versus chances you generate with the extra man, when is kind of the optimal time. And I think to some extent, if you're trailing by like 4 goals, and Minnesota used to do this a few years back. I don't know if it was under Dean Evison or if it was before that, but they would actually pull goalies. It was a couple of years ago, I think, where they pulled a goalie with like 10 minutes left, and they skated for like 3 solid minutes and didn't give up a goal, but didn't score a goal either against the Stars. It was a game where you kind of just started to wonder, maybe they should play the whole game like this, because they're not giving up goals and they're generating good chances. So maybe what would happen if they tried to play the whole game 6-on-5? This is one though where I think that it wouldn't shock me if this is a decision that's made as an organization, right? This is some of the data that the coaches are getting, and they're kind of deciding on it as a team. What do we want to do in these situations? So it's not just the head coach kind of going by feel. It's more of ideally when we're trailing by 1, we want an offensive zone faceoff, or at least to get the puck in the offensive zone. Maybe you wait longer if it's not a faceoff, but when it's an offensive zone faceoff, I think that's a point where, hey, at least everyone knew they were pulling the goalie this time. So that's improvement for Edmonton, I guess. Yeah. As opposed to the other night.
Speaking of goalies, in the last series, they did pull Skinner put in Calvin Pickard. And I'm wondering, as they try to create momentum similar to what Vegas did, is that a move that maybe Chris Knoblauch makes, putting Pickard in for a game? I personally feel as though Skinner's still playing really well, so that might be tough, but Pickard is a leader amongst that room. I mean, his nickname's the Governor, because he's so well liked, and he actually is, which is kind of strange, a pretty vocal person in that locker room for being a backup goaltender. He's also very tight with Skinner, so there won't be any animosity. But just wanted to throw that out there. I personally would keep Skinner in, but it might be a move to try to create some momentum and try to pull this series tied.
Well, I think it goes back to your question earlier about how kind of mentally shaken are they after a game like this, where you blow, I guess it's only a 2-0 lead and it's only after the first period, but it does feel like Edmonton completely blew this game. At least from their perspective, I'm sure it feels that way. From the other side, it feels like the Stars just woke up and took control and were the better team for the majority of the game. But from the Edmonton side, this has to sort of feel like, what happened? We came out, we had a game plan. Second game in a row, we controlled the first period, had the better first period, and we couldn't finish it and just got completely defeated down the stretch. So what's going on? So you could, on the one hand, see him switching goalies if for no other reason, just to kind of do it the way coaches do in a game sometimes, just to kind of give their team a jolt. So you mean he's done it before? So you could see Knoblauch doing it again for that reason. Or on the other hand, you could see him sticking with him this time as kind of a vote of confidence, saying, no, that's not on you. Our whole team needs to be better, as a message to the team. So you could send a message either way, but given that he's done it before, it would not surprise me at all, especially with that last goal being a bit of a bad one, I would say, from a goalie perspective. It wouldn't shock me if he did indeed go to Pickard for game 4.
Yeah, maybe some lineup changes, which would be interesting. They did get Henrique back, and that's kind of been an interesting trade. I thought he would be more effective. It's just he's a very, very good player, but it just, to me, compared to other trades in the NHL, and granted, he's been hurt, but I just haven't seen what I thought Adam Henrique was going to bring to the table.
Yeah, kudos. He got that goal from tonight, and if this game goes a different way, or if they get just one goal from their power play tonight, that normally has been money for them, right? That Stars PK is starting to become a story in this series too, just like it was against the Avs early on. But if it's a different sort of game, then that goal is your depth goal, and that justifies the trade in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Game-winning goal, or at least get you to overtime. But instead it's just too little, too late, and you just have to wonder, right? What could have been? And Edmonton really didn't change the team much from the start of the year to this point in the year. Some changes, but not a lot. And boy, they sure would have loved a Chris Tanev. I'll tell you that, with the way their defensemen have been playing in the bottom four.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cameron says that goal right before the end of the second period could have been a backbreaker, but we found a way to win. Great to have Hintz back. Go Stars. Thank you so much, Cameron, for supporting Spits and Suds. Running through a bunch of these right now. You guys are awesome for sending me all your pictures of the Frosties. And supporter of the DFW Wyatt's Ken Pitch Clock, which I absolutely love the name. You said water counts as a Frosty, right? Yeah. So here's the rule on Spits and Suds. It's whatever you're drinking. So it's not necessarily an alcohol thing. Personally, Robert came to the table, and I do it as well. I love the sound effect. But at the same time, it's whatever's in front of you. It could be water, it could be Coke, could be, whatever beverage you want to join at that moment. We just enjoy it together. And that's what's awesome about Spits and Suds. Moose in Dallas says, cheers, fellas. I heard them say that McDavid and Draisaitl were on the same line, and I immediately heard Sean's voice from the last pod saying they were in panic mode. Let's keep them panicked. I got to say, and Robert, you're on this tweet, he cracks this Frosty on top of a Mike Modano sweater. Risky play.
I mean,
Risky
I guess
play.
If it's an authentic 1999 sweater, I'm sure a lot of those were soaked in beer. So, I guess that's not too different from that. Makes it more authentic, I guess, in one way.
Absolutely.
So we'll give him credit that way.
I mean, tons of credit. But don't let anything get on that sweater, because that's a beauty, my friend. Moose, thank you so much for sending that picture in.
I will say too about McDavid and Draisaitl being together. This is another situation where they got a goal from McDavid and a goal from Hyman, and both of them were minus in this game. McDavid is on the ice for 3 goals against. Hyman is on the ice for 3 goals against. You just can't. This team just cannot survive, despite getting the depth goal from Henrique. They just couldn't get enough from anywhere else, because they just can't. They can't outpace their shortcomings with their top line. They did it in the first game. They did in game 1, just barely. It took them 2 overtimes, but they did. And the last 2 games, they've been getting points from their top guys. Not McDavid in the last game, but they just haven't been able to get enough. So if Dallas can keep things flowing at 5-on-5, there's every chance that this series is a lot shorter than Edmonton was hoping it would be when they're going back home.
Yep. Zach Mitchell, I know we've talked a lot about embellishment calls, but it just seems like it's open season on 27 because he always gets called for embellishment no matter what. Unfortunate to have a history, I guess, but frustrating. I think you nailed it, Zach, and you answered your own question with the history.
Yep. The officials don't like being embarrassed. Yep.
Right, absolutely. And Mason Marchment certainly provides a level of physicality, gets in front of the net, kind of stirs it up at times, and
scored a big goal the other game. Yeah,
absolutely. Has not gone over the line, which I think last regular season, not this regular season, but the one before, where we all looked at Mason Marchment prior to Matt Duchene's arrival and said, wow, this could be a bad contract. But, has had a great regular season and did not take some of those silly penalties he took in his first year with the Stars. Aaron Thacker, the mental toughness on this team after another slow start is impressive. My question would be, how is it to correct the slow starts in future games? Wow. Thackman, my man, if you can figure that out, we're going to put you on the coaching staff. Robert, I know Sean and I, it seems like we've talked every single podcast about these Stars slow starts.
I mean, it's been said before, right? But what would you rather have, a team that's great in first periods or great in second and third periods? So obviously you want to be good in all 3, but hockey's game momentum, and whether you could argue that maybe it's like a feeling out process where Dallas is, adapting to what the other team is bringing, especially as they've been such a good team in the last couple of years, that it's often that the other team is changing their play style to try to find a way to solve Dallas, whereas Dallas is really comfortable playing its own game a lot of the time, rolling 4 lines and all that sort of thing. So maybe it's just a case where another team can really load up, really game plan, and really try to overwhelm them, but they just can't keep up plans like that for 3 periods. Whereas Dallas, once the game kind of settles in, Dallas is going to be the better team when it gets to that point. That's the charitable way to interpret it. The reality is, maybe there were just some different lines with Hintz coming in and players playing with some different people or finding chemistry. And you just hope that doesn't keep happening, because you do not want to lose games with more first periods like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ginger Ninja Cyborg, big Stars fan, says never doubted them. Hey, kudos to the Stars fans. I was actually around the AAC prior to tonight's tilt, and it was really cool seeing Stars fans, walking up to the plaza and setting up their chairs and watching the game. And Jeff Kay, the Stars PA announcer, took some cool pictures, and it was just quite a nice crowd out there. So it's awesome, and it's great to see. Once again, I'll go back to those heritage cities like Edmonton and Toronto and Canadian cities and like their plazas, how they're rocking. So it's really, really cool to see that Stars fans want to be with each other. They're in the plaza, they're celebrating. I think that means that, hockey is growing, and for good reason here. Obviously, winning counts.
Salute big savings this Memorial Day with Blinds.com. Upgrading window coverings can be a minor project with a major impact, and Blinds.com makes it easy. Choose premium blinds, shutters, and outdoor shades, just in time for summer fun. Get unlimited window treatments installed for one low cost, all backed by Blinds.com's 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day sale now for up to 50% off, plus premium doorbusters. Save up to 50% at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Bai. It's Wonder Water. What makes Bai so great? It's simple. From Raspberry Lemon Lime by Sydney Sweeney to Zambia Bing Cherry and Palavo Pineapple Mango, Bai has antioxidants, electrolytes, and no artificial sweeteners. So for flavorful hydration, choose Bai. It's Wonder Water. Learn more about Bai and discover all of the exotic, bold flavors at drinkbai.com.
Life is full of things to manage. Your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Chris Stabkoven says, I'll ask a better one tonight, my guys. I'm just going to stop there, Chris. There are never any bad questions on Spits and Suds. We never want to give you that impression. This is all about learning, growing together. How come, for instance, me listening to Robert and Sean last week and learning, how come the Stars have started slow this series thus far? They seem to adjust well after the first, but what can they do to start quicker? Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of old school, Robert. I like a little physicality to begin the game. I like, not mucking it up, so to speak, but getting in tight. And I mean, we'll see. But this, unfortunately, Chris, is, one of the Stars' MOs, but Robert put it best. They come through when they need it most. Mayor Bear, what a ride. There were times in the first where we lost the fundamentals, and then were times in the second where we finally crashed the net. Glad we found control, even when McDavid is going to McDavid. In my feels watching the guys tonight. Thank you, Mayor Bear. I believe you're in Portland, Oregon. So thank you for following us on Spits and Suds. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Robert. McDavid's going to McDavid, and we are watching the best player on earth. And I said this on the last podcast, probably the wrong vocabulary to say it's a pleasure to watch in this series, but it really is. I just enjoy watching him as a player.
It's even easier to enjoy it when he's being defended well too. So even a couple of times when he really got going through the neutral zone and came with speed, it was really impressive to see whichever Stars defenseman it was matching up against him. I mean, Esa Lindell has probably gotten undersold for how well he's defended some really, really good players in the last couple of series and played a ton of minutes doing so. But it didn't seem to matter, whoever it was. Now, Suter and Petrovic had some rough moments, but again, that's your third defense pairing. You're going to expect that. but that's okay. That's okay. You can handle them having some rough moments. I don't love the Suter penalty late in the second period, but watching McDavid is a pleasure, especially when you have enough defensive depth to contain him, right? To just contain him to a medium grade scoring chance when he has some space. That's a win. That's a win when you're facing McDavid.
Yeah. I mean, we talked earlier, Robert. I just thought of this. We talk about Hintz reinsertion into the lineup and what it does for Robertson. Can we say the same about Tanev and the acquisition of him and what it's done for Esa Lindell?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. This last year, Esa Lindell was playing with Jani Hakanpää almost exclusively. And in the playoffs, that pairing against Vegas in the Western Conference Final got mauled. Their goal differential is really bad. They were just getting outscored like crazy when they were in the ice. And they, to the point where Hakanpää, I think, was even scratched for a game. And I don't think it was for health reasons, at least not publicly. So maybe it was hurting. Obviously, every player, I'm sure, was banged up a little bit. But last year, Esa Lindell is playing with a player who effectively is a third pairing defenseman, right? But he was paired with him on the second pairing, and they were having to face really stiff competition. You can't really hide because you had Joel Hanley playing on your third pairing with Thomas Harley actually last year. So this year, Lindell is playing with Tanev, who can play top minutes, who's right-handed, but can also skate really well, and is just a really good defenseman. I mean, he is a really, really good defenseman. It's been said everywhere, but it's true. So when you have a player like that, Lindell, there's a lot he doesn't have to do all by himself, right? And Lindell also had an amazing stretch pass to send in Marchment on that breakaway in this game too. It just feels like Lindell is playing a freer game, for whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's that knowing you have Tanev there to clean up stuff on the ice, or whoever he's paired with, because the defense pairings have been mixed up a little bit too, even with Petrovic coming in. Lindell's just looked like a different player this year, and it's been really cool to see. And I think Tanev is probably a big part of that. So give him a lot of credit, but give Esa a lot of credit too for kind of refinding some of the best parts of his game.
Yeah. So I'm going to pair up Jason with Belfour's Billions bribe, and Jason starts with Marchment clearly has a reputation. How do you feel with the physicality against him now if everything is going to result in an embellishment call? I don't think everything's going to do that. But reputation, and he does try to sell penalties. And he gets a lot of penalties for this Stars team, but at the same time, that reputation is there, and the referees know it. The league knows it. And Belfour Billion chimes in, that wasn't a dive by Marchment. Regardless, so much fun to watch this game on a plane back from Boston with my son, where he played a hockey tournament and learned to deal with the quote, "They have hockey in Texas" comments. I would say that they should check out Blake Coleman, the Jones boys. Let's see. Tyler Myers was born in Texas. Stefan Nason is a Plano kid.
Yep.
Let's see. Sorry, go.
Well, I was one other thing about that Marchment hit in soccer. That's not even frowned upon at all. In soccer, if you were fouled, even if you sell it, all they're looking for is, was there contact that could have brought you down? If there was, great. Doesn't matter how much you accentuated it. Marchment just kind of plays with that sort of mentality of there is contact. It's not a dive in the sense that he's pretending there was a foul when there wasn't. There absolutely was a foul. I think the problem is that his mentality is more making the most of when there's a foul. And NHL refs, like it or not, most of them just don't want to see that. If they see that, then they see it as you're not really trying, you're not really playing through it, right? And it's some of that toughness mentality, like it or hate it, that's just kind of unique to the sport. So yeah, it's not a dive in the traditional sense, but it's just overselling it, I guess, a little bit would be maybe what the refs saw. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Two more I'm going to throw in. Hannah Bilka of Capel, now with Team USA, and will be a top draft pick in the upcoming PWHL draft, as well as who else will be drafted? Let's see, Allison Simpson of Frisco, who played for Colgate, and she's terrific as well. And both of them were in the Final Four this year of NCAA women's hockey. Bilka with Ohio State, formerly of Boston College, and Simpson with Colgate. And Hannah Bilka went on to be a national champion. So just an enormous rise in hockey players from DFW, and just wanted to point some of those out. So you can tell your son, my man, that there are tons of players coming through the system, and hopefully he's one in the future as well. Let's see. Christopher DeHardy, Jason Robertson seemingly broke the laws of physics when scoring his third goal. That, or do I need to get a new pair of glasses? Great fight back after being down 2 goals early. And for Gretzky to say that's one of the strangest playoff games he's ever seen, that's something. Yeah. You know, it is interesting having Wayne in the booth for this series. And I don't disagree. It was a strange hockey game, and but at the same time, they came out on the winning end. It was just a tale of 1, 2, or 3 stories throughout the game. It was topsy-turvy, so to speak. Matthew Martin also chimes in about Roope Hintz, Robert, but he also says this time the forechecking from Roope Hintz was elite tonight. Could tell Robo needed him back on the defensive end. What adjustment could we make in front of the net? Every goal against was in the crease, it seems like.
I mean, it's not like they were guys wide open in front of the net, right? Both situations were guys kind of covered, like there was someone on them. Hyman was, in front of the net, literally, like right in the blue paint. And that's a situation where you either push him in and create enough contact with the goalie. I mean, you see players do this, and we saw it against Colorado, where you push a player into your goalie and you hope that'll negate a goal call because you can't get around behind them and you can't pull them out. They're supposed to clear out eventually, but that situation where there's not much you can do when Hyman's there, other than try to check him into your goalie, and I don't think Oettinger wants that happening. And then the other one is a situation where Seguin is on McDavid. He's clamped down on his stick, being really hard on his stick, and it's just one of those, it bounces perfectly, right? If it bounces a little bit one way or the other, then you talk about how Seguin was playing great defensively, and that's a great veteran play that he wouldn't have made when he was really young, or whatever narrative you want to spin. So I don't know that you need too many adjustments. I think they will look at that play of Edmonton very clearly coming in, behind the net and then popping out around a little kind of double. There's a little additional pass, right? So that one of the guys in front of the net peels off. So that creates more space for the second guy then to curl out from behind the net and shoot or pass, whatever you want to call it, from the circle. So that's definitely a play they'll be more aware of, and I'm sure they'll look at it on film tomorrow. But I didn't see any huge wide open breakdowns. I just saw Edmonton very clearly trying to exploit that and throw pucks there. But that's what they were mostly doing, is throwing pucks there. And the Stars had guys there too, and they just lost a battle here and there.
Yeah, Michael Moore says he asked earlier, but also commenting again, Thomas Harley does not look right. Lots of misplayed pucks. It is interesting, Robert, that if we do want to nitpick, which is tough when you're up 2-1 in a Western Conference Finals, and after a big victory, I wanted to get your take on Thomas Harley throughout these playoffs.
Yeah, it's been interesting. After last playoffs, where he kind of his coming out party last year in the playoffs, I think everyone was kind of really excited to see now what's going to happen after he's got a whole year. And he was really good during the regular season this year too. I mean, scoring a bunch of goals, all those overtime goals and everything. And seeing what can you do with Miro Heiskanen in the playoffs. And part of it, I think, is that Miro's been the one kind of piling up more points. And so Harley's been more inclined to be kind of that second man back, right? That kind of safety who hangs back a little bit more. I think that is part of it, which is the right play. When you have Heiskanen playing really well, of course you should be doing that, right? I also think Harley's been a little more hesitant to creep down low and to try to beat guys one-on-one, partly because of the quality competition. It's just the playoffs. People check more tightly. So a defenseman can't wind up and find quite as much space going through the neutral zone as maybe you can against Anaheim in the middle of the season, right? So some of it's quality of competition too. He had one really bad turnover in this one, I think in the third period, that nearly turned really bad. He wasn't the only one who had a bad defensive play or bad defensive pass, certainly. So I just wondered tonight if it was an ice thing or something, because there were a few instances where pucks just seemed to bobble longer than you'd expect. Yeah, I do think Harley's going to be okay. I think part of it is also this run just feels different in a lot of ways too. They're not facing Minnesota and Seattle. They've been facing very, very good teams. Any one of these 3 series could have been a Western Conference final for all intents and purposes.
Agreed.
The Stars have played 3 Western Conference finals so far.
Yeah.
So I think Harley's just been playing a little bit more cautiously, if that makes sense. He has 1 or 2 times he's kind of rushed up a little bit when it's been the right move. But I think he's probably just being a little bit more careful. I don't see him playing with an injury or anything like that, if that's the question.
I mean, not trying to over exaggerate, but if the Stars went on to win the Stanley Cup, I think you could look back at history and say, is there a tougher road as far as the new era of the NHL playoff format than what the Stars have played? And I don't want to get ahead of my skis here, but at the same time, to take out the last 2 Stanley Cup champions, and then if you win this series, to take out 2 of the top 10 players in the world and a red hot Edmonton team with the best record since January. And then if you go to the Stanley Cup, you probably have your toughest task in Florida or the Rangers. It's just a gauntlet. So, wow.
Yep. Yeah. The Stars could very, very, very much play 3 incredible teams in the West and then face the only team in the NHL that finished higher than them in the standings in the Stanley Cup final.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. We haven't talked really about that because we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I mean, that series is so tight as well. All right. Carrie Eddy says Pete DeBoer has shown that he is the best at in-game and in-series adjustments. Bad first periods in game 1s have become a hallmark of this team. Should Pete DeBoer get more credit for his adjustments or blame for the slow starts that require the adjustments in the first place? Love the podcast. That's a really interesting, actually, question from Carrie, Robert, because, you know, does he get tons of credit for being undefeated in game 7s as well? So sometimes it might be coincidental, but at the same time, you do have to look at that and say, okay, why do they keep losing game 1s? Is it coincidence, or, is it something where they need to get going in the series? It is fascinating. And then the slow first period starts as well.
Yeah, I think, y'all have talked about the first period thing, not necessarily being just a DeBoer thing, that being a kind of longer term thing with this franchise. But I do think that, without knowing every tactical adjustment they're making between periods and everything the coaches are seeing and then changing, we can kind of infer some of it from watching, slightly shifted breakouts or switching the side of the ice, or, they're trying more reversals behind the net to switch their breakout and kind of, deflect the F1 or the F2. You can get into that. Obviously, every team's going to be doing that when a team comes out with a strategy that works really well. They're going to get back to basics and remind their players in the intermission, hey, when this guy's coming hard here, go this way or that way. I'm sure they're doing that. I don't think we have enough info to say they're better at it than anyone else in the league or something like that. At least I'm not comfortable saying that unless I'm, spending a lot of hours on video looking at it. What I will say, I think that they're pretty good at, and you could argue this is a big part of the Game 7 record for Pete DeBoer too, is really, really instilling a lot of confidence in the Stars to play their game and tell them no matter what happens, we're going to play our game and we're confident that it's going to be good enough. And over the long haul, over 60 minutes, it'll be good enough to win us the game. And that's been the case now for 2 games. And you could argue that would flow into a Game 7 mentality as well when nerves are going to be crazy, no matter what athletes say. And no matter how many games they've played, Game 7s are different. Everyone says this, especially after they've retired and they speak more publicly. Game 7s are different. It's a very different mentality. The pressure and the stress is just otherworldly. And for a coach to be able to tell them, no, we're absolutely playing our same game, we're really confident, and for the players to actually believe it, I don't really know that you could have a better game plan than that. That's because when everything else fails, you want to be falling back on what you know and what's worked for you. And it seems like he's done that really well with this team, at least in the 2 years he's been here.
Well said. Let's end with Brandon. And for those of you that we didn't get to tonight, thank you so much for your comments. I'll try to answer them personally. But it's so awesome receiving all this feedback. It's become a staple of the show. So hopefully we get to as many as we can. Brandon said, cheers, boys. Miro, in my opinion, and this is why I wanted to end on this, is the best player on the ice in this series. Harley is getting shots through, just need one to get through. I think more praise for Lindell's game, needs more national coverage. We did highlight that on tonight's Spits and Suds, Brandon. I love watching Stanky. He's such a dog, needs his flowers. Also would love to see the broadcast panel say one good thing about how good the Stars played in that second and third. It is interesting that we're about 120 into this podcast, my friend, and I did not bring up Miro Heiskanen. So for that, I apologize, but I think maybe it's just because we're used to him being this good.
he and Roope Hintz have well, they have a couple things in common. Obviously, they're both from Finland, but the way they eat up ice to get to pucks in crucial positions, whether the puck's on a player's stick or it's a loose puck, the way they eat up ice, it's not just about speed. It's about a lot of things. It's about the read they're making. It's about their balance and their momentum and their positioning. It's about their judgment about whether or not I can make it or whether or not I'll be out of position if I go for the puck and don't get there. If you really should. It's been said so many times in so many different contexts since 2017 or 2018, I guess, when Heiskanen started with the Stars, but he was drafted in 2017, that you should just watch him for a game. Just isolate Heiskanen and just watch him for a game. It's hard to do during a playoff game, I know, but there's also no better time to do it. Or maybe go back and watch it if you have the game recorded. Go back and just watch him. This would be a great game for it, because the amount of times where he made a smart pinch, or the amount of times where he crossed the ice to cover up, or the amount of times he's playing a one-on-one or a breakout behind the net and he switches back or makes a really quick touch pass or a play or a turn or whatever it is, the amount of times he makes the right play at the right time, it'll boggle your mind when you think about how many ways there are to make the wrong play. And we've seen defensemen in the past make the wrong play far too often. To see how many times he makes the exact right read and he has the tools to execute that read, it just blows you away. It's, people brought up his name as a potential, if things should go this way, as a potential Conn Smythe player. And it's hard to argue with that right now. He's got the points also, right? He's pitching in, he's involved in the offense, and he's, he had that stretch until tonight. He hadn't been on the ice for a goal for 5-6 games or something like that, at least. Just playing outstanding minutes, and the Stars actually allowed him to, he got a little bit more rest this year than he did last year, thanks to their increased defensive depth. So, this is the sort of run that you want him to be relatively fresh for. And he's shown that he can do it.
Before we let you go, I wanted to just ask you and highlight you because you have a brand new website called starsthoughts.com. And you do a great job writing. You're well regarded. We love having you on Spits and Suds, whether it's the regular season or this in the playoffs. For those listening right now, please give him a follow at Robert Tiffin and starsthoughts.com. So what brought you to the point where you said, I'm going to create something on my own?
Well, I appreciate that. For a long time, I was writing for a couple different places, and that writing all just kind of flows out of genuinely just love for the sport and the amount of time I've spent around this team, either as a fan or covering it in a more professional capacity here and there. And ultimately, I just decided I wanted a place for my stuff to live, and a place to be able to write what I wanted. So during the playoffs, I've started it since game one of the playoffs. Actually, I've been writing just about every day. So at this point, it's kind of alternating between a game day piece that'll go up later tonight, and then a more kind of a feature piece on off days. So it's just kind of a chance to put my stuff out there. It's all free. It's not any shade for people who have subscription based services. Sure. Obviously those are way better because you have to pay for them. But I just really have always enjoyed the Stars fan community and putting stuff out there. Even the hockey community, I will say, everyone out there is just great. I mean, a lot of the folks you have on here, I don't need to praise them that much more, but it's been really cool, the amount of people I've connected with in really meaningful ways just by virtue of talking about this hockey team. And, if there's a chance that a couple more people will get to experience that just by reading it on this weird website somewhere, then I'm happy to have that out there, because when this game is great, it's pretty darn great. And, I'm pretty happy to talk about it, as we can see tonight. I'm pretty happy to talk about it, given half a chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's starsthoughts.com at Robert Tiffin. So I'd love to activate the Spits and Suds audience, because you have been a big part of Spits and Suds, as has David Castillo, Sean Shapiro, Craig Ludwig. One of the positive aspects that we see when people leave reviews is love the people that you have on. And you're a big part of it. So click to starsthoughts.com, everyone. So support Robert in his efforts. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it's nice popping a frosty for you. You made my night.
Yeah.
You came to play. I didn't even have to say like, hey, could you go grab a beer? I mean, you were ready, my man.
It's the playoffs. Next man up. You got to be ready.
Sean might be back on Wednesday night. And that's the other cool thing is these guys have legit, he's covering the Memorial Cup, which is massive. So stick tap to Sean, and I'm excited to read his coverage of that. We were talking earlier. I do have to get myself to a Memorial Cup soon. Also want to point out tomorrow on Spits and Suds, another person that we've had on several times who's doing a real nice job, Leah Simakopoulos from the Dallas Morning News. What'll happen tomorrow is the Stars will do the press conference after practice, as well as the Oilers. So Leah is going to be there in Edmonton. She will talk to us tomorrow and give us the latest from both teams. So stick tap to Leah on her coverage in Edmonton. So we'll get the latest from her on tomorrow's Spits and Suds. And then, of course, we'll be back on Wednesday after hopefully another Stars victory on the road in Edmonton. For Robert, Tiffin, I'm Gavin Spittle. Thank you so much. Can't say it enough for supporting and growing Spits and Suds. You guys are our teammates, and we truly appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.